Namaskar, I'm Nidhi Kumar, host for today's session. We're extremely excited to bring to you Eat Right India initiative of FSSAI. We're very, very grateful to Herbalife Nutrition for supporting us in this endeavor. Also acknowledging our broadcasting partners, the Josh app, Daily Hunt, and Mitro app. And together we'd like to welcome all the viewers on this session today. And we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed how we work, how we play, how we deal with ourselves. It's been hard, no doubt. And it's forced to rethink ambition and happiness, and of course, understand our intrinsic vulnerabilities. The pandemic has seen India also becoming mentally, a lot of people are weak mentally, and with numerous restrictions in place, citizens find themselves difficult to exist on all kind of levels that they did before the pandemic. To talk more of this in detail, we have with us the sports scientist and the very eminent psychologist, Shayamal Vallabhjee. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here with us. And viewers, a little bit about Mr. Shayamal. He's a sports scientist with a master's in psychology. He's trained with monks and worked for more than 20 years with elite sports persons. His approach combines science and ancient spiritual practice to develop lasting wellness protocols. He is a South African sports scientist, author, performance coach to professional athletes and corporate executives. He holds a BSc in sports science, MSc in psychology, and an MA in industrial and organizational psychology, and has worked with the South African and Indian cricket and tennis teams, traveling on the ATP tour for 6 years. Based in India, he's also an eminent member of the Herbalife Nutrition Fitness Advisory Board. Shayamal has spent 4 years living as a monk in ISKCON temple in South Africa. It was there where he studied mindfulness, meditation, and Vedic sciences, which inspired him really to bring together world psychology and club it with spirituality. He's an author of 4 books on sports science and motivation and has a 4-time TEDx speaker to his credit. Among his accolades include the Inc. and the Australia-India Youth Dialogue Fellowship, Men's Health Trainer of the Year 2014, and Asia Spa's Wellness Guru of 2019. Many thanks for joining us today, and thank you so much for sparing your time.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, for inviting me. I'm excited to be a part of such a beautiful initiative and hopefully share a little bit from my journey and my learnings.
Absolutely. How would you explain mental health, Shayamal?
So mental health as a term really and truly refers to what we call the cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being of a person. Mental health as a term, or mental wellness, is ensuring that all of these faculties around that state of well-being are intact, and a person really is able to process their emotions, they're able to realize their own abilities, they're able to cope with normal stresses, they're able to work productively, they're able to make a valid and valuable contribution to their family and their community as such. That's optimal mental health or mental well-being. People often confuse the term mental health with mental illness. Mental illness is a health condition that is related to one's inability to process their emotions, their thinkings, or their behaviors as a result of stresses from work, from family, from how you show up in there. So mental health is the optimal state of being. Mental illness are the conditions that prevent you from showing up in the best way possible for yourself. And mental illness as a subject is generally classified into 4 areas. We look at anxiety disorders, which is your panic and your stress. And a lot of us are facing that right now. And we can talk a little bit more about it as time goes on. There's mood disorders. Mood disorders are related to your emotions, like your sadness, you're having chronic depression, your inability to get out of bed. Then you have the more serious type, which are your psychotic disorders. Things like your schizophrenia, you start seeing things, you start hearing things, you get hallucinations. And then a category that's not spoken of very often is the eating disorders. So people have anorexia and bulimia. So these are the 4 main categories of mental illness that a person would have that would eat away at what is called optimal mental health.
Absolutely. And how would you explain the concept of balance? What, according to you, is balance?
Well, balance is the concept I've been working on. It's a concept I've been promoting for a long time. And balance for me is how we need to obviously operate. And for me, it has four components to it. It has the components of body, mind, relationships, and your environment. And if I just explain each one of them, the body is how you train, your quality of your movement, the quality of the nutrition and food you eat. It becomes your vehicle. So it's the amount of energy you put into looking after this vehicle. The mind is the quality of your thoughts, your ability to handle your stress, your ability to show up and be grateful for every situation, your ability to see the silver lining sometimes in your pain, your ability to forgive and move beyond things. These are the faculties of the mind. The third is your environment. And the environment's a really interesting one. Not too many people actually talk about it. And I define environment as everything through which we consume information via our five senses. So the food you eat is your environment. The sounds you listen to are your environment. Where you sleep and where you work is your environment. The clothes you wear and how it touches it and the feel you have, all of these make up your environment. And the environment is a very, very critical component because it helps you support yourself in your goals or your aspirations to get to a better place. Okay. And then relationships is the fourth vertical. Relationships are where you spend your energy, your time, the people around you that nourish you, that support you, that challenge you. What is the quality of those relationships? How can you make them better? And how can they support you in some shape and form? So for me, balance is when I walk a person through the process of understanding the four pillars, giving themselves a score in each of these pillars, and understanding which is your anchoring pillar, how you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and how to navigate that subtle equilibrium that exists on a day-to-day, second-to-second, moment-to-moment in every single one's life. Because that's what it is. It isn't a static state of being. It's a more fluid and dynamic state of being that's ever evolving. And that's the approach that I try to coach with respect to balance.
Absolutely. And your concept of holistic wellness takes into account the environment and person's internal systems. Do we necessarily need to have a six pack or be able to hold breath for 60 seconds for it?
I mean, you don't need to. Each person's idea and concept of wellness is completely different. For some people, you may want a six pack. For some people, you want maybe wanting to do deep breath work. If you look at the concept of longevity as such, the research around blue zones where people live the longest and live the healthiest, the quality of their movement is not vigorous or high intensity. There's no high intensity interval training classes there. They're not doing any fasting. They're not doing too much of breath work. They're just living a very subtle, beautiful balance that's centered around eating plant-based foods and working in some sort of community. And I think the question comes down to each person really and truly needing to understand what their definition of well-being and wellness is. If you want a six-pack, why do you want a six-pack? Do you want it because you think that, I will find a better partner? Do you think I will be accepted better in society? Do you think I'll be more famous on Instagram? When you want to do some things, why are you actually doing it? And as soon as the lens points to the outside, where you're doing it because you think it's going to expect something or it's going to validate you in some shape and form, it's not going to be sustainable and it's very dangerous. But if you want something for yourself, I mean, I have a lot of clients who say, I want to get a six pack. They are not going to show it anyway. They're not going to do it, but they fundamentally believe that I have the capability of achieving that body type. And by not getting it, I'm letting myself down. So it's very important to define why you have a certain wellness goal in place and break that down layer by layer, because the psychosocial and the neurobiological impact of the root of that goal is far more important than the goal itself.
Absolutely. You've talked a lot about this whole balance concept in your books. And your books have been seemingly simple ideas, but with a larger message. Tell us the amalgam of your years of study and practice, and what are you trying to convey through your writings?
I mean, it's a fascinating concept, and I'm evolving on a day-to-day basis. as a coach, as a teacher, as a student of life, and a student of spirituality, every single day we evolve. I wrote a book. I often ask myself, if I had to rewrite that book 1 year later, which is now, how would I change it and what would I redo? Buddhism speaks about the principle of impermanence, which means that I am not who I was, and I have no reason to hold myself accountable to an old version of myself if I'm growing in a positive way. So my entire philosophy on life with everyone is, make change a part and parcel of who you are. Make change a constant in your life. Every single day, change something, challenge a comfort zone if it's just 5%. Make yourself comfortable with the fact that things are changing, and then you'll make yourself comfortable with the fact that everything is impermanent. When you start developing this healthy relationship with impermanence and change, you no longer look for control. And control is probably one of the most pervasive mindsets that a person can get, because it locks you into a victim state and you are scared to move in any shape and form, because any movement can change something. And a person who's trying to control is trying to control a fixed state. So my entire process in life is embrace that change and find peace with it. Find peace in impermanence. Ensure that you wake up every single morning and you're doing something that's helping you become that better version of yourself, because that's the secret. You don't know where your journey is going to end. You don't know how long that journey is, but we just got to make tiny steps every single day towards becoming that better person. And along the path, you will meet many gurus who will teach you many things. You will meet many scientists who will give you different diets and different pieces of information. You will meet many psychologists who will give you different productivity tips and techniques to deal with your mental health. You're going to have open to you an entire universe of knowledge. And your job is to use the alignment of your mind, body, and soul in encompassing and enveloping your relationship with change and transformation to decide what is beautiful, what is needed for me, and have that beautiful dance. Dance is the word that I love to use, because when you dance, even if there's a person leading, right, at a time in that dance, they have to follow. There's an ebb and flow in dancing. There's a give and a take, and that's the beauty. That's what balance is. With every breath you take in, you have to give a breath out, and that's balance. That's yin and yang. It's the presence of one that makes the presence of the other possible and allows us to see the beauty in it in some shape and form. So my entire philosophy on life is see life as a dance of energy, a dance between knowledge, a dance between people, a dance between you and your environment. And when you're dancing, things are changing. Just hold that core.
Very true. And with holistic wellness being the end objective, what are the three most important pointers? I'll say this again. With holistic wellness being the end objective, Shayamal, what are your three most important pointers for staying fit at any age?
For staying fit at any age, I think the first one is to keep your mental faculties in tune, which means constantly be working and thinking about something, work on a project. It doesn't have to be a business. You don't have to start your own thing. You don't even have to lead all the time. You can just play a small part in a big team or in your community. So the first thing is keep your mental faculties in tune. The second one is movement. 10 to 15, 20 minutes of movement every single day, a brisk walk is very, very important, because our bodies were meant to move. We are not trees. We don't have roots that keep us in a single place. Movement is essential to our well-being. It's essential to our mental health and our physical health. And it's the gateway. The reason why I tell people to move is because when the mind or your mental faculties are compromised, you can use your body to kickstart that mental faculty. And we've all seen this, where you're feeling lazy and tired. You go for a walk, you do 5 minutes of exercise, and all of a sudden 5 minutes becomes a full hour session, because the body can kickstart the mind in a very, very beautiful way. So that's the second one. Second one is to embrace movement. And I think the third most important thing for optimal well-being, for longevity, for a healthy, content life is kindness. Start being kinder to yourself, start being kinder to everyone else around you. When you can allow yourself to be kinder to yourself, you lower the burden of expectation. You lower the bar for gratitude. You lower the bars of expectation. When you drop all these bars down, you see the world changes for you. Why? Because you start to see light and love in every single small thing around there. Even a beautiful leaf and a beautiful flower could enlighten your whole day. Why? Because you brought the bar down. Most people, we keep our bar so high that we cannot even be kind to ourselves, let alone be kind to everyone else. So these are my 3 sort of tips to how you can live healthy, happy, and long.
Absolutely. How important do you think is resilience?
Resilience is fundamentally important. Resilience is your ability to cope with the stresses that are presented to you on a day-to-day basis. And there are many, many techniques around that. I mean, probably one of the most famous techniques, and the techniques that I talk a lot of, is based on the principle of philosophy of Stoicism. Now, Stoicism came from the old Greeks, and 3 of the most famous Stoics was Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. And it was their philosophies that the world has borrowed around this philosophy of Stoicism. And what is Stoicism? Stoicism is the process of living your fear, owning your fear, thinking about your fear. And a really simple exercise that someone can do is, it's called the what if exercise. So you sit down and you just calm the mind down, and then you think of the problem that's bringing you most anxiety. And then you think of the outcome and you ask, what would happen if this manifests? What would be that outcome? And then, okay, if that outcome happens, what will happen now? And then what will happen now? And then you play the outcomes in your mind around your anxiety and stress. And the anxiety and stress will ebb and flow, but you'll get to a point where you realize that, oh, the 10th outcome down the line to something I'm stressing for is really not a problem. So I don't need to stress there. And that's a beautiful thing that the Stoics brought us, which is how do we live our fears and how do we challenge our fears. And then there's another beautiful philosophy, if someone wants to practice, it's called amor fati, which is also Stoic philosophy, where you ask for more. So when you say, I have pain, I have trouble, I have anxiety, you ask for more anxiety, ask for more stress. Why? Because as it increases, what you have is no more stressing you out anymore. So as one increases, this diminishes. So the amor fati principle is very, very beautiful. But Stoicism is a way of life. It's not something you can just do when you feel triggered. It's something you have to do every single day. And for those who want to build resilience, obviously things like compassion and gratitude, things like journaling. As a psychologist, we lean towards cognitive behavioral therapy, where we use the rational mind to process our options as we're moving forward. All of these are really powerful. And resilience is an ever-evolving process.
Absolutely. And during these current times, Shamal, when everything seems surreal and the lines between home, office, work, leisure, and family have become so blurred, how do you tackle these kind of issues?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one of the best ways to tackle it is to build systems, and I do this. In fact, I was having a call this morning with one of my clients, and I'll give people a tip on how to tackle it. So instead of trying to think about what habit you want to build, okay, I want you to think about the person that already imbibes those habits and the person you want to become. So for example, let me take an easy example is always, an athlete, for example. So most people want to get fit and want to get healthier, and they want to aspire. They look at these professional athletes and they want to be like them. So every single time you're faced at this junction in life where you need to make a decision around a food choice, around an exercise choice, around a sleeping choice, you ask yourself, and let's assume that that avatar that you aspire to be is a Virat Kohli, or that avatar is a Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, right? You ask yourself, what would Messi do? What would Virat do? What would Ronaldo do? You play that situation out from that avatar and be guided by the direction that those people would do. That's one of the beautiful ways of sort of imbibing your hero and living through the avatar of your hero. But systems are the most important things. You got to ask yourself, what are the systems I need to put in place so that I can execute what I need to better on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. Is there any mental health workout to increase your productivity, Shaman?
Yeah, productivity is a very, very interesting word. And I mean, I speak a lot about productivity. And the word that goes hand in hand with productivity is often procrastination. So people who are not productive have identified the fact that they're procrastinating. And quite honestly, my relationship with procrastination is evolving as well. If I spoke to me 3 months ago, I'd have given you tips on how to beat procrastination. And over these 3 months of just sitting with this topic of procrastination, I've realized that it's a double-edged sword. We can view procrastination as an obstacle that we need to move past. I need to wake up in the morning and do this. I need to exercise. I need to do this. It's a physical obstacle I need to push past. Or you can view procrastination as an inner voice that's struggling to buy into a certain practice. And the reason it's struggling to buy into that practice is because that practice is not aligned with who you are on a soul level. Right? So I would tell someone that if you're struggling to find productivity, right, let's sit for 5 minutes and ask yourself, what am I struggling to do? And then be honest to yourself. Why am I struggling to do this? Do you actually believe it or not? Do you actually want to do it? Is it something that someone else is asking you to do? Is it something that you haven't fully bought into and you're trying to convince yourself to push past into? And when you sit with that answer, you'll realize that you are not able to do it because it's not in alignment with who you are. You are getting some feedback from an ecosystem that you're not happy about, that's trying to mold you into a person you're not happy to become. And that's why procrastination is there. So procrastination is the universe's little voice that's telling us, hey, sit back for a moment. You're about to take a step in a direction that's not in alignment with who you are in your soul. So that's how I like to view procrastination now.
Beautiful. And what are the signs that really show that you're bottling up your emotions? How do you read that and fighting on battles? And also, since we're talking of nutrition, how important is nutrition for a healthy mental balance?
Well, you are not a byproduct of what you eat. You're a byproduct of what your body digests. And the reason I say this is because there's a few myths around nutrition. People think I eat something healthy and then I'll become healthy. No, if your body can metabolize what is healthy, you will become healthy, right? And the way to know this is to firstly work on culturing your gut bacteria, because you have 1 trillion bacteria in your body and they break down everything, and that's how you grow. Okay, so the first myth is I'm not what I eat, I am what I digest. So you can do a gut microbiome test to understand what your body can digest. You can do an allergy and an intolerance test to understand how your body processes certain foods. And the more you eat in alignment with that, the better off you're going to be in terms of growing and healing from the inside out. The second myth around nutrition is that high calorie foods are nutritious foods. And the problem with processed foods right now is that all of the good nutrients, all of the fiber has been extracted from it, and it's been infused with palm oils, and it's been infused with sugars to increase the shelf life of it. So the caloric content in food has gone exceptionally high. The nutrition content has come exceptionally low. Right? So it doesn't necessarily mean if you're eating more, you are nutritious. You could be nutrition deficient and be fat, really and truly, or overweight in some shape and form. We seem to have myths around our body type and nutrition, and we need to break those myths in some shape and form. Okay. And to come to the second part of your question around how do we know what we're bottling up in the relationship between these two? Your emotions are a byproduct of the 4 driving hormones in your brain. They're GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine, and serotonin. The balance of these would drive how you show up on a day-to-day basis and how you're able to process your emotions, how you're able to set boundaries and have healthy conversations. Those hormones maintain a balance through the food that you eat. And research has shown that literally, there's a beautiful study where they took a group of students and they gave them an experiment. The experiment was they had to sit in a room, and someone walked into the room and there was $100 on the table. Okay. And that person was going to decide how much of that $100 they were going to share with that student. And then the student was faced with a decision. So the person would walk in and they were instructed to give them only $10. And that person had to make a decision. So if the student accepted the $10, he could take the 10 and go. And then the other guest would take the 90 and leave. If the student rejected the $10, both of them, and the student didn't know this, both of them would leave with absolutely nothing. Okay. And what they found was that people who ate a high fat and a high protein diet, within 15 minutes of eating that food there, they were able to make a decision that allowed them to see, I may not be getting the same as the other person, but at least I'm getting something. They accepted the 10 and left. People who ate high sugary diets, high carb diets, were automatically triggered. They saw the imbalance and they said, no, we're not taking this. And what's important in this research is that your food has an impact on the way you think within 15 minutes of eating it. People don't realize that, And whilst the outcome of what you eat is so powerful in this research study, more powerful than that is the fact that your food is directly impacting your decisions on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. How important, according to you, is mindful living in current times?
Yes, mindful living is extremely important. Mindful living is about, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is presence of mind, to be fully engaged in something. And when you're fully engaged in something, you can dance with it. As a host, when you are fully engaged in the answers that someone's giving and fully engaged in the questions of it, you can move with it. You can see whether it's going, where it's going. And I'm using that as an example because that's the situation that we're currently in. There's a dance between us in terms of the questions and answers that are going and the energy that we're feeding off each other. A doctor and a patient, there'll be a dance of emotions. A doctor has to sense the fear in a patient and then dance with that fear and know how should I position that. Now, that dance is a byproduct of mindfulness, being mindfully present in that moment to be able to understand how to navigate change in some shape and form. It is the essence of everything, because if you're not in the now, you're either in the past or in the future. And both of those places are not great for your mental health or not great for your well-being at all.
Absolutely. And one last question, Shayamal. With major international sports event being postponed, how anxious is the situation for sports people? And according to you, what are the 4 verticals that we need to concentrate to bring about better mental health in the country, in the globe?
It's, the 4 verticals is always what I talk about: body, mind, relationships and environments are the 4 verticals that I'm talking about. The second question of international sporting events, it is a very anxious time for athletes because they've been participating and living in bio bubbles for close to 2 years now, so, and remember the psychological makeup of an athlete. They're very free. They're used to traveling the world. They're used to different spaces, and they're constantly on their move. And because they're on their move, they generate a lot of their energy and get rid of a lot of nervousness from that movement. Now they've been locked into a single bio bubble. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult for them. We're creating techniques and tools to help them build a sort of resilience in some shape and form. But and that's why we're talking about resilience and mental health right now, because over the last 2 years, it was our role models in sport that really brought this to the forefront. It was Naomi Osaka in the world of tennis, Simone Biles at the Olympic Games, Virat Kohli mentioned it. A lot of other athletes have been talking about it, and they're talking about it from the context, and it's impacting them directly because of physical performance. But the truth is, it's impacting all of us right now, and it's a topic that every single one of us need to speak about. So we should be grateful that our sporting icons have brought this topic onto the table.
Absolutely. And in the end, I'd like to thank you for your time and
Thank you.
for, all the insights and all the questions that you've really answered. And best of luck in all your endeavors, sir. And we'd like to speak again and again. Our deepest and warmest gratitude also goes out to Herbalife Nutrition, Eat Right India, and FSSAI. Let's make the society more aware and let's make a healthier, happier India and a happier globe. A special shout out to our broadcasting partners, the Josh app, the Daily Hunt, One India, and Metro app. Thank you so much for joining us, viewers. And let's have an overall happier outlook and an improved ability to focus. On that note, many thanks for joining. Namaskar. Namaste, I'm Nidhi Kumar, your host for today. We're extremely excited to bring to you Eat Right India initiative of FSSAI. And together we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you watching us today. I'm also grateful for the support of Herbalife Nutrition and to our broadcasting partners and their support, Daily Hunt and Josh. So friends, mental health is a long rejected aspect in our society and hence is met with strong negative beliefs and stigmas. It is very important for us, therefore, to communicate that mental health is not only important, but also influenced by what we consume through eating and drinking. Moreover, its impact is very large on the choices we make when our mood is not fine or challenging due to stress. According to the WHO, mental health is not just the absence of mental disorder, it is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential and can cope with the normal stresses of life and can work productively and fruitfully, and therefore can make a contribution to society. Let's gather some insights on today's program. I'd like to welcome Jigyasa Tandon, President, WICI, Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She's a young mental health reformer who's redefining mental health space in India by developing mental health community, positive community. She's a trained mental health educator from NIMHANS, Bangalore, and a counseling psychologist with expertise in dealing with on-field, grassroots level, and sensitive groups. Her areas of expertise are media psychology, applications of physiological principles in the legal field for reformation and better management of judicial stakeholders. She's therefore expanding Indian society capacity for dealing with mental health problems and suicide prevention. Many thanks for joining us today, Jigyasa.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do you define mental health? Panic or anxiety?
Right. So when I say mental health, and we were having a discussion with ex-director of NIMHANS, Dr. Satish Chandra, where we discussed that mental health can be also thought of, men telling stories to heal. So when with lifestyle changes and how the generational gaps have been there, and so many generations have been developed in India, we kind of our participation to the society is lessening and more chaotic, which is why we are leaving behind the idea that we have to work productively, we have to do something which is out of our way, something which is contributing to society. So Adam Smith had said this quite back. He was a very famous economist in and why I'm referring to him is because his philosophy largely applied to today's psychology, because mostly today economical basis decide how much psychologically secure we are. So most of us are burned out because of the fact that we are just doing work mindlessly, we are educating mindlessly, we are just scoring numbers. Earlier, it was said that we are going to we are going to different schools because different schools bring different philosophy. Today it just stands no meaning, and every everywhere, I think every school, like whatever the previous experience even I have in schooling, is that they only focus on numbers. So everything is becoming number focused, because of which mental health issues like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, which is very extensive, are becoming so high in numbers, because people don't know who to belong, who to connect with, who to take security in, because everywhere the floor is so ungrounded and so insecure that mental health today is lacking, because we are not talking. Oral discussion is, or written communication is so important, because social media, artificial intelligence are taking so much on our head that literally we are losing our capacities to heal, and that is why we are in the danger zone. And there was a prediction made in 2010 about the fact that in 2030 the uh, world, the largest burden will be of mental health. And I think visibly today it's so true that we are lacking in production, we are lacking in our care, how we invest in ourselves. Everything has become instant, Instagram, insta noodles, everything has become so instant that security has no place, and distress has gathered more number.
Absolutely. Jigyasa, you're so right. Mental health needs to be brought to the helm, and people need to know more about it. We have to talk about it relentlessly every day. It almost is taboo in India. We do not talk about it.
We
We
don't.
choose not to talk about it. We choose to look away from it, which is where all the problems are taking place. And the suicide numbers are very, very large,
Very large, very large. This is so sensitive.
very sensitive. So I'd like to ask you about this only now. What other reasons do you see that the numbers in suicide cases are going up so high? Why is this impact so large and so challenging to us?
Right. So I would say this, like we get up with the, pressure of seeing our phone, and we sleep by, with the pressure of seeing our phone. So on phone, it is like artificial intelligence, which is basically, letting us talk and everything. So on chat or on written communication, everything looks fine. So if you're angry, most you can use cuss words and everything. But when you are sad, you don't want to share it to other people. And because of the fact that everybody just wants to hear, like if somebody asks how are you, everybody just wants to hear I am okay. Nobody wants to have that conversation where pain is involved, where somebody wants to share something of their own. Ideas are rejected, everything is so rejected. If you say something also and it just cancels the other person's philosophy, the ego becomes so big and fragile that everybody is just playing on the cancel culture. So a person has become so scared to even raise his or her opinion, that he doesn't know where to go, simply, because of which suicide rates are going high, because people are not expressing their emotions. People are so burned out with their corporates, they're merely treated as labors, like every day you have to go to the office. The idea of taking rest or taking a holiday is so bad and considered so unprofessional, that if somebody wants to take an off, it's a big question, or a in MNCs it becomes a massive issue to be raised upon, that why the person is not coming. So making people do things which are so unproductive, and the focus on numbers again is so high that nobody has this descriptive connection to them. Everything is okay, this is, I'm calling this number, I'm connecting with this number, I'm connecting with this. So identity crisis is so large. Everything, like today, how many clients have you seen, have how many this have you done, have you how many this, what is your Google rating, what is this, what is that. Everything has become on the stars of 1 to 5, that we have barely lost acknowledging the human side which is there. Like in recent news also, a person did 145 degrees in the lockdown. Just
Mm,
imagine the pressure and triggers to people who are going through so much of mental health struggle at that time.
mm,
You are showing off that you did something, and in India he will be considered a big man because everybody thinks that he's educated. But what he is educated, is he invested in everything? Did he really learn what is it? And is education the only key that will make you productive or very effective in society? Which is very wrong. It's a big question. So we need to understand that human side is not philosophical shit. It is very much important, and everything is running on psychology. It's just that we, as common people, don't want to accept that we are being mentally fooled by so many people, and we are mental slaves to today's artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And I don't know, I think that is the reason why most people are leaving their jobs and getting out of offices and wanting to just be alone on by themselves and do something productive from their homes.
Yes, yes, that
And
is
on the other hand, there is another side to it where children are not finding employment, so they're getting more and more depressed because there are no jobs.
yeah. And that is why people find startup culture so secure, even though it is baseless. Everybody wants to just do their own work because they don't want to adjust to the bosses and everything. And bosses are also like this only because they don't want to adjust. That is why work from home culture is so prevalent and easygoing in India, because everybody wanted that break.
And everybody is now going for it, and rightfully so. For the next 2 years, we'll find the space really filled up. On that note, I want to ask you, vitamins and minerals impact the moods. You've been talking a lot about chocolates doing the same. Throw some light on all of this.
Sure. So I was doing some research where I, got invested in the idea, and diet. I'm very grateful for this initiative to cover the mental health side, because diet is so positive and it is so linked with our mental health. And little lifestyle changes that we say that don't eat because of physical weight gain or physical identity is affecting mentally also. Just because it is not being seen doesn't mean it's not being getting affected. So when there is a panic attack, usually people have coffee, which is very wrong. Actually, it's a myth to have a coffee during a panic attack, whereas chocolate is so I would say is a gangster of its own, because it tricks us into this manner where it activates the same reward path which is activated by pleasure. And it has so many components which impacts our mood in a way where we become happy. Our the pleasure aspects in our brain gets activated, happy mood, positive mood. So that is why when we are in a hyper arousal state and every part of the body is working so high, we need so much of glucose at that point of time. That is why chocolates are very necessary. Whereas if you offer coffee in such a situation, the person might can get heart attack or mental fatigue, can get so much nervousness, jittery, he can start shivering or she can start shivering. So it is very, very important to understand that what should be given at what time. Then vitamins and minerals are so important, like vitamin D, which is like sourced through sun and eggs, are is so important that it is directly linked to depression. Vitamin 12, if it's low in our body, it hampers concentration, learning power, memory formation, which is so important. Because if a child or a teenager or an adult is not able to concentrate on something fully, how will he process the information? How will anything will happen progressively in his environment? So we need to understand that vitamins play very important role. Even like vitamin C, which is called the immunity booster otherwise, is actually helps in enhancing mood by calming down the body, because it brings back the homeostasis balance, which is tipped off by stress. So having oranges or lemon water is so important, because it helps us calm down. So whenever we are extremely stressed out, it is almost important to have like something which is having vitamin C in it.
Mm.
So these are few important factors which helps us have a better lifestyle, and choose more fiber and nutrients over the fact that it ensures good development of not just the brain and body but mind as well.
Absolutely. What would you like to now tell us about bananas? Because there is a lot of, you know, basis to say that bananas help us nutritionally to
Yeah.
help fight depression.
Bananas are not just nutritionally healthy, but they are, if you will see, they are, man's best smile. It's almost like a smile on the face. Banana is like that. So it is so important because it carries, it is, again, mood lifter.
Hmm.
So when a person has depression or anxiety, he or she is suggested to have bananas, because banana are very important in bringing back again the pleasure. It gives potassium, it gives magnesium, it gives other vitamin to the body, which helps us smile. So automatically, and it makes you feel full also.
Yeah.
So, and it's much more healthier than an apple. So banana a day in today's time is actually keeping doctors away because right now, more than physical, we are under so much of mental health burden, that bananas kind of help us a lot. So it's like, carry your biggest smile everywhere. So that is why it is very, very important to have bananas.
Yes, but food used as negative coping mechanisms can lead to mental health issues. Could you highlight a few of these?
Yes. So, even for me, while growing up, we are obsessed with lean bodies in our society so much that we tell people, it's a common philosophy which says that no, don't have alcohol, it will spoil you. Don't have, medicines too much, it will spoil you. Don't have psychiatric medications because it will spoil your brain. But what are we doing to people who are fat? Just because of some hormonal imbalance, PCOD, or maybe any other thing. Why are we taglining or sidelining them with the fact that okay, this person is fat, so let's not talk to it. Maybe that person is lacking major nutrients in the body. Maybe that person is going through something which is struggling at the moment. Maybe the person is just not right, and that is why,
Hmm.
because stress also it expands the cell, which makes the body go bloated, and the person looks fat. So in such a way, a lot of people adapt to this idea of anorexia, where they starve themselves. They don't eat anything, they eat an apple a day, or maybe something very little, and they're so scared of eating food that they starve themselves just to attain the perfect body. And intermittent fasting is a very prominent ideology in their mind. Whereas there is another thing called bulimia, where person binges, first of all, eats a lot to store the food in its in his body, but then realizes, oh my god, I've eaten so much, I have to throw out. So then he or she goes to vomit. uh, then there is binge eating, which is becoming popular with Netflix and chill, because everybody is just eating food by just sitting in front of the screens and everything. Couch potato philosophy, basically. So these are few of the negative coping mechanism, where the person hates food and or eats too much food just to cover the insecurities. Their comfort foods that develops. So we have to create a balance in the fact that अगर हम ढंग से खाना नहीं खाएंगे, तो और ये सब का imbalance रहेगा, so it will create more and more problems.
Yes, जिज्ञासा now, मुझे ये जिज्ञासा हो रही है आपसे जानने की that adulterated and fried food also impact people in a different way, not
Yes.
only physically but also mentally. How is it mentally and how is it physically impacting?
Yeah, so adulterated food, physically, we all know it affects the brain. It makes the growth, it hampers growth. And adulterated food is not anyway a healthy option to rely upon. And fried food जो है इंडिया में तो हर जगह ही मिलता है. Everywhere fried food is like,
Trans fat, used oil, reuse.
yeah, and so many problems come up with that. And the fact here is that when we have fried food, it is hampering our brain health development, and it is also hampering our immune system. Now there is a microbiota in our stomach or in our gut, which only processes fiber. Our body has become such that now, there are lesser bacteria which finds fiber, and because fiber is there in the body, every part of the body will get the nutrients. But with fried food and dependence on fried food, this microbiota hampers. And moreover, it hampers our learning and memory, concentration. And once we are gaining weight because we are developing our dependency on fried food, there will be body esteem issues, self-esteem issues, where the person will be commented by the society, and then again depression and anxiety can develop. So it's a long chain which can start from consuming fried food, which affects not only the brain health and physical health immediately, but it has a long history associated with it for the mental development, mental health care as well.
Absolutely. So, what, according to you, which food will have a mental health, high or positive impact on mental health?
So, in my what do you call? In my perspective, I think uh, all meat is very important. Meat is going to help different parts of the body, and right now it is also a cause of proteins. People are not having dals these days that much, or they have it very less because of different factors. So meat can be taken as a replacement, and it is healthy. Then caffeine or tea in a regulated manner, because caffeine is also one of the drugs. It's a stimulant which hampers body. So it should be whether it's green tea, whether it's tea, whether it's lemon tea, whatever, any amount of nicotine should be going in a regulated manner. Drinking could be moderated. It's not that we are telling people not to live life. Social drinking is fine, recreational drinking is fine. Drug usage is highly disregarded, but this is newer studies have come which says that psycholytic drugs are also having a positive impact on mental health. So that is a new side that we have to carefully study. But then berries, vitamin C, oranges, tomatoes are very healthy. More than cucumber, actually, tomatoes are a rich source of energy to our blood and to our brain as well, and mind as well. So all these fruits have colors, and colors have leafy, greeny vegetables. So I always tell this to my clients, that your plate should look like a garden, a fresh garden, so that you also feel smiling when you see those colors. Just having just because today I decide to lose weight, and I just pick up one apple or one banana, that is not the process. It has to go through, if success has steps to um, reach, everything has a process to reach somewhere. We can't just skip and just say, like, today only I want to stand on one without making any effort. So I think small efforts have to be done, and it should always be in a process. So if a person, it's very much said that if a person is in grief, the person will go through denial, the person will go through depression, and before the person becomes well. So we need to understand that we will lose weight. Only process is that the only key is that we have to follow a process, and instantly anything which is gifted will not benefit.
Absolutely. And on that note, I thank you for joining us today, Jigyasa, and for your valuable time and insights.
Thank you.
And friends, a happy and healthy life is a dream for all of us. Happiness is critical for your success in any sphere of life and for the good of your mental health. And on that note, I'd like to thank Herbalife Nutrition for having supported us in our endeavor. I'd like to thank Daily Hunt and Josh, who have worked relentlessly. I'd like to thank FSSAI and a special shout out to Eat Right Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. Namaskar. Well, eating a nutritious diet helps us to keep healthy, and it also helps reduce some of the chronic diseases. This is sometimes called the food and mood connection. To explain this further, we have with us the very eminent Dr. Sukriti Chauhan. I welcome you. It is an absolute privilege and honor to have with us today Ms. Chauhan, who is the CEO of ETI, an advocacy and communications professional working with the Indian government and NGOs as well as the international philanthropies to enable better health access in India and across the globe for the last 8 years. An NLAC scholar, a trained lawyer with masters in international development law and human rights. She's also recently been awarded a doctorate in philosophy. She has worked on multiple issues, including sexual and reproductive health, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, cervical cancer prevention, and maternal and child health, and also closely on the Amitabh Bachchan campaign, TB Harega, Desh Jeetega, which has now reached 99 million people. One of her major achievements was contributing to much of the early communications and advocacy work, which has led to India's initiative of partnership with the Ministry of Science and Tech. Welcome, Sukriti, and so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Nidhi, and the pleasure is mine, and very important conversations. So happy to be here with you.
So according to you, could you explain to us or define nutrition? How do you think it's important in today's scenario? And how can we prioritize mental health?
So nutrition is, according to me, like petrol to a vehicle. I think having a healthy mind and body in sync is very, very critical. What we eat is how we are going to think, which is the mental health connect to nutrition. I think this is an underexplored area, and I'm so glad that we are talking about it because this deserves to be explored further, not only in India, but across the globe. Data is indeed missing, but we know the linkages between eating right, feeling healthy, thinking right. Issues of, fats going into our body, for instance, the fatty foods, the fast food can really cause issues of obesity. We know that it's a global issue. Eating healthy, eating right. And I must say that a lot of the Indian foods really fall on the sphere of what we should be eating right. The home cooked food, the local foods, the stuff that we grow at home. Mental health, like I said, is very, very critical, not only to stay healthy physically, but also to be able to not be in depression, not be faced with issues that are unsolvable, which can drive you to an extreme levels of, taking actions which we want to obviously avoid. But like I said, I want to reiterate, it's an issue that is underexplored. Mental psychiatry as an issue has started gaining some attention, but I think we are far from really, talking about it in India.
Absolutely. Now, according to you, how has the pandemic affected access to nutrition, especially if we talk of women and children, Sukriti? This impact of the lockdown has been, really devastating to a lot, many people. It has not only depleted their incomes, reduced the incomes, fear of the virus, and inaccessible private sector services.
So Nidhi, we know the data, it's quite stark, but I also want to say that India is a big nation. It's a big challenge. We are very heavily populated, and we must understand that challenge. And saying that, I think, 189 million people are undernourished in the country right now, and majority are women and children. And that has been the case for multiple years. We have often, you and I have also spoken about this cycle of undernutrition, because it continues, it leads to stunting, wasting in children, and it is a cause of concern. Not only was the challenge big earlier, and I think the government has responded to it, with its partners and is trying to do better. But the way that the COVID-19 pandemic impacted was, I'll give you an example of, say, midday meals. Children were going to school and suddenly it all shut down, which meant that, the meals that they were getting, the nutrition that they were getting in the schools suddenly was lost to them. And we must remember that poverty is a huge issue for a large population of this country. which meant that, it went back to children not having any resources, any stability and access. Also, we understand that nutrition is a gender problem because you brought up women. I mean, I have no qualms in saying women eat last and they eat less, and sometimes they don't eat. And I think that has been the case for multiple number of years, and it just impacted, COVID just made that worse. When we speak of the integrated child development services, the ICDS, that got impacted because people were not able to access the government run health and nutrition centers. So, it all, I think COVID-19 in a sense really redefined the gender gaps. Not that they were not there earlier. I'll close out by just talking about the fact that, the frontline workers, millions of them who were focused on nutrition, suddenly lost, the focus because they were put on COVID duty. So suddenly COVID became a priority and nutrition took a backseat.
Absolutely. Now, if we talk of nutrition and depression, I mean, what's the kind of disorders that you'd like to tell us about?
I think, a nutritious diet and its association with lower risk of depression and mental health disorders, again, is an area that Nidhi isn't really well researched. Like I said, nutrition psychiatry globally is now becoming an issue. But I do think that, the issue of malnutrition or this widespread concern that we have can really fuel depression. Like I mentioned in my previous question, what we eat is how we feel. And I think we need to start focusing on this, and eating traditional Indian diets may be a response on how you can stay healthy. The local solutions that I brought up, ragi, maize, jowar, lentils, these are food items that are healthier for the body. Yeah, that's it.
So, eating disorders are a high concern, especially in teenagers, due to excessive societal demand to be lean. What would you like to comment here? And how do you think
Actually,
we could change this?
sure, and I think it's a very sensitive topic, and I just would like to share something personal that I've actually had very close friends who've suffered from these disorders, whether it be bulimia, this desire to fit into society, this desire to look lean. The size of your waist should not be a concern. Actually, I was just reading and I came across a quote which was very interesting, that it's not about what your weight looks like on a scale. It's about how you're thinking in your mind at that moment. And I think, how would I solve it? I would like to have more conversations, especially with adolescents. And I would like to reiterate that I think it's high time we listen to them rather than dictate to them all the time. I think they have concerns, they need safe spaces. Definitely in terms of nutrition and the pressures of the society, create the safe spaces where they can approach and not be reprimanded. Take away the stigma from these conversations. Create a conducive environment for young people to have these conversations.
All right, Sukriti, very well said. What is Poshan 2.0 according to you, and what kind of changes are expected with this initiative? If you could give us a broad spectrum of this.
So the Poshan Abhiyan and obviously now 2.0 is, of course, India's flagship program when it comes to really improving nutrition outcomes for children, women, and lactating mothers. I think I'd like to actually start by talking about, really commending the government for the kind of senior leadership it has shown by launching a nationwide program. I mentioned earlier that nutrition isn't an easy problem to solve. It's going to be a challenge, but the fact that the highest levels in the government, whether it be the Ministry of Women and Child Development or the Honorable Prime Minister, coming together and really focusing on it is what has really changed the way we look at nutrition today. Poshan, of course, has 3 umbrella schemes, which is Mission Poshan 2.0, Mission Vatsalya, and Mission Shakti. But I think the more important point is the tall goal that we have, that we are going to move towards a malnutrition-free India by 2022. I think the basis of Poshan 2.0 is the fact that it focuses on behavior change. and communication. And I do want to bring up a very important part of the mission, which is Jan Andolan. The power lies in the community for change. From a personal project that I've led for Children's Investment Fund Foundation, where I worked in Odisha with the tribal populations, I realized that the community-led approach, the citizens coming together, demanding rights, was a method that worked. And Odisha actually went on to increase its nutrition budget by 25 times. So really the power of the community is what Portion 2.0 focuses on. It focuses on young mothers because we have to break the intergenerational cycle of undernutrition.
What would your advice be then for, a diet plan for the common man? एक आम आदमी की अगर हम बात करें, for his holistic health or her holistic health, sustainable, healthy diet combinations, according to you, which would propel, doing away with disorders of any kind?
I think, I'll use the example of, say, Nutri Gardens or local foods. I mentioned earlier when we spoke on mental health and nutrition that we must eat right to think right. And I think with Nutri Gardens really being promoted as a solution, local foods being promoted as a solution, India is a big country. We can't eat the same thing everywhere. So we have to understand which zone is comfortable eating what. And once you have that figured out, Nutri Gardens have really proven to be a method that's working. In fact, now it's expanded into school gardens. Schools are right now shut, but we've experimented with it and how children really shape their habits around it. So I do think it's very important in enhancing, national food security and dietary diversity. So I do think that's one method that we should really focus on, promote. Eat right, eat local. I've already mentioned what those foods are, but just like focus on, in fact, in rural areas, Nidhi, you'll know this, that, farmlands are there. It's easier to create the Nutri Gardens there. So, just because you may not be very rich, but you can still eat right. I think the problem lies in urban cities where we are eating things like fast food. We are focused on, the kind of oils we use, the amount we eat. I think the concern really needs to be addressed in urban cities like Delhi, Bombay, and you can say the likes.
Yes, Sukriti, you're right on that. And here I'd like to ask you your perspective of the global, tangibles that are being followed across the globe vis-a-vis India. What needs to be bettered? And do you think corporates need to come forward and lend a helping hand?
I think food is a very personal choice, Nidhi. So I'm not going to say whether you should be vegan, vegetarian, or non-vegetarian. I think that's wrong. And I never have that conversation. I think food and mental health are personal decisions. But globally, we can see the shift slowly happening. There are conversations about the fatty foods, whether it's the chicken you're eating or the mutton you're eating. I'm not at all promoting just be vegetarian. Like I said, it's a personal choice, but you can see veganism coming up as a big option. I've been following that across the globe. But I think also there is a sense of being conscious. Even in countries like US, UK, US has a huge issue with obesity simply because, fast foods are the favorite food. So I think there is a lot of talk around how do we make that shift? How do we ensure that our children are healthy from the time they are in the womb to as they grow? So I do think a shift from fatty foods, a shift from oils, a shift from how much meat we are eating are conversations that are going on. I'll go back and I'll reiterate that, India has a very diverse, I often say, what's in your plate? We have so many plates in this country. And I think finding that balance is not that difficult.
So according to you, eating right is important, and it's important to, see that there's a lot of mythbusters also around nutrition, like you rightly mentioned. So what is your vision for the children and youth of our country in closing?
I think I'll just say that children are the future. There is no debate. And I think we should take it as a personal responsibility when corporates come together, when governments come together, when you and I come together and we are having this conversation. Like I said, from the womb, I think start caring for the mother first. And not only, I'm actually focusing on the postpartum phase. I mean, nobody talks about it because it's not important. But mothers are important, their lives are important, and children and young people are what is going to make the future. So my suggestion or my request to the stakeholders is that start focusing on children, start focusing on their nutrition. The government is very, very well focused on it, but governments cannot do their work alone. And I think that's where we need to step in. That's where corporates need to step in. That's where the civil society needs to step in. But come together because it's the hope of the nation and the future.
And on that note, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and sparing your valuable time. I would like to conclude by saying that when you stick to a diet of healthy food, you're setting yourself up for fewer mood fluctuations and an overall happier outlook and improved ability to focus. So eat healthy and stay healthy. A special shout out to FSSAI, Herbalife Nutrition, and our broadcasting partners, Daily Hunt and Josh, for helping us reach millions of citizens. Thank you so much for joining us. Namaskar.